Um, I'd like to welcome you to the afternoon session of the Digital Transformation in Government Conference. We have the pleasure today to have Amarjeet Kaur. She's the Director of Digital Human Resources over at National Defense. And she's going to be talking about how to apply a human-centric approach in a complex and emotionally charged environment. She's got a very interesting presentation for you. She's a visionary and empathic leader. She has a wealth of experience leading multidisciplinary digital teams in both the public and private sectors, including PSPC, Transport Canada, Treasury Board Secretariat, Nortel Networks, Telus, and Cisco. Driven by her passion and human-centric approach, she brings diverse people together to unpack complex problems. Notably, all of the previous presentations in the 3 days have alluded to the requirement for a human-centric approach. This is the first one that's going to address it. Okay. Amarjeet holds a master's in computer science, a bachelor's in computer science, a project management professional, and the ITIL certification, IT service management. Well, without further ado, we're very fortunate and we really appreciate Amarjeet coming forward to present to us. Over to you, Amarjeet.
Thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank again Bob for allowing me and inviting me to present the human-centric approach today to this conference. So as you know that most of the digital transformations fail because there is no clear articulation of the problem goals and how the organization is planning to scale the solution before investing. It has been famously said by Einstein that it's important to pause and take time and spend more time in thinking and unpacking the problem rather than jumping to the solutions. Hence, we need to leverage the new mindsets and methods such as human-centered design to better define the business problem, leading to valuable and innovative solutions. Most of the world's leading brands, such as Apple, Google, and Samsung, have adopted this approach as it revolves around a deep interest in developing an understanding of the people for whom we are designing the products and the services. Let's take a look at the two different techniques. The first one is a very famous technique by Standard D School. It has a 5-step process. We start with the empathizing with the user. By observing and using various questioning techniques, we understand their assumptions, challenges, frustrations, and aspirations. Then by looking at the qualitative and quantitative data, which is collected during the empathize phase, we come at the define, where we reframe the problem in understanding what problem we are trying to solve, for who, and why it is important to solve this problem. Then we come at the ideate, where we explore the out-of-the-box thinking and art of possible ideas. Then we take 1 or 2 ideas based on the rationality and start building the prototype. We take those prototypes back to the users and test with them to really understand whether it is solving the problem, what we have identified in the defined phase. If not, then pivot and try different prototype. And that's where continuously evolve and improve. The second technique is called double diamond. The 2 diamonds represent the process of exploring an issue more widely or deeply, which is a divergent thinking. And then taking a focused action, which is a convergent thinking. Here, we start with the issue or a problem, and we take the original problem just as a suggestion, not as a final statement, and then think broadly about the real issues, get to the root causes, and then coming to a point of clear understanding of the problem. And then we go back and diverge again to rapid testing of ideas, getting feedback from the users, measuring the impact, and finally converging to a clear understanding and arriving at a proven concept. These 2 techniques, D-School and divergence and convergence, allow drivers to consider business viability, technical feasibility, and people needs, and make us to look into the sweet spot, which is the really human-centered design. These concepts align well with the capability-based planning paradigm, the concept from the open group, and originated in business planning. The capability describes what the business does, and it includes people, process, and material dimension. By following this human-centric design approach, the business gains deeper insights into their own problem, as well as into the user needs, which helps them to take the informed decision to develop a roadmap for the right solution. Since the user is involved at every step of the phase, less change management is required, and there is more possibility that the end product will be accepted by the user. In order to be successful in this digital transformation journey, 4 C's are important. The first one is co-leading with business. It's not business versus IT. Both business and IT has to work together towards the common goal and vision. The second is we need to collaborate at all levels. Collaboration with academia, private sector, other government departments, and engage various experts from the beginning, such as security, privacy, enterprise architecture, to get their diverse views and co-create the innovative solution. Finally, continuously improve and iterate and measure. Let's look at the case study. At PSPC, I had established the Human-Centered Design Office from the ground up, and I'm talking today about one of the case studies from there. In March 2020, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic created a complex and emotionally charged environment at the organization, and it affected the well-being of all the employees. Let's see how we have applied the human-centric approach to solve the situation. The well-being, when we talk about well-being is about taking care of a person as a whole. It has 5 aspects: physical, emotional, mental, workplace, and social. By underpinning this context, we developed questions and conducted focus and group interviews with diverse employees to hear their lived experiences and challenges. By analyzing the data, the qualitative and the quantitative data, we developed 3 personas. The first, Alana, the team player. The second, Mike, the task enthusiast. The third, Sophia, the leader. We categorize the data into various levels: the needs, pains, opportunities, as well as in the bar from the personality and the bar for the well-being, to really understand that persona. So let's look at Alana. Since she is a team player, she enjoys social interactions. So some of her pain points were missing the human interaction, fearing that the email might be looked at in a different way, difficult to manage a new routine at home, overwhelmed with the lots of news which is coming. So here is the opportunity for her, is that maybe she's looking to have a once in a week virtual coffee where she could have a social interaction. She would be looking to have a platform where she could engage with the employees. Let's look at Mike. Mike is a task enthusiast. He is an employee who is used to enjoy telework once a week to accomplish his task before the COVID happened. So now with this COVID, with the constrained VPN, he's unable to do those tasks. So he's feeling guilty of not doing enough work. He's having ergonomic problems by sitting long time at home and he's having a fear of losing the job. So for him, it's important that he should have a clear understanding of the goals and the priorities and good access to the VPN. Whereas from Sophia's perspective, Sophia is a leader. It includes everybody, the supervisors, team leaders, senior management, and managers. For her, some of the pain points were inconsistent platforms, which is used to engage and communicate with the employees. She is worried that the information, she's storing the information in unofficial channels. So for her, it's important to get an understanding how to manage the remote team and what tools we should use. So again, by looking at the whole data captured during the data categorization, we come back and laid out with the 5 aspects. Under the physical, it was very clear that some of the challenges were related to ergonomic problems. Under the emotional side, there were challenges related to stress, anxiety, and fear of losing job. Under the mental health, it was more about difficulties in concentrating and having a feeling of loss of productivity. From the workplace perspective, it's not having tools, no clear directions and priorities. From the social aspect, it was more about lack of face-to-face communication, which tools to use, and what to do for the team building activities. Once you have laid out really the challenges, we come back to the define statement, reframing the problem. This is a point where it needs to have the conversation with the senior management to really understand how we want to reframe the problem, what problem we are trying to fix, and for who. So it was decided that we would be providing this information, tools, and training to the employees. But employees will continue to manage their own mental and social well-being and build resiliency. With this clear articulation of the problem and understanding, we go to the ideate phase. We explored multiple options and narrowed down to 3 options. The first, a GC-wide platform where we could have an open discussion about the well-being. The second is developing some kind of external portal dedicated to well-being, which can be accessed from anywhere, from any device. And third was building a digital playbook. Because of the constraints on the other 2 options and the speed we needed to build, we decided to land on developing a digital playbook. So this playbook contained the contents, which was based on all the pain points which we heard from the personas. As you can see, it contained the section about the managers, how to manage the remote employees, most frequently asked questions for the managers, section about the self-care and resiliency, some seminars, online resources. On the social side, it's fulfilling the needs of personas about team building, activities, and games. Again, some tools and tips and tutorials about how to use these tools and how to work from home effectively, and some of the other resources from the public servants and help from all Canadians. So this playbook, when it was released, it was very well received by the employees. Now, putting all of this together in the 5 steps. So as you can see, in the empathize is the most consuming time because we do 4 steps in the empathize phase. Then comes the reframing of the problem definition to really understand what we are trying to achieve and why. Then coming to the ideate, where you explore the problems and pick up the best solution to solve your problem. Then prototyping and testing. So this is to show in one small, one infographic, how all of these 4 steps, 5 steps of the design thinking are coming together. So let's look at what are the key takeaways from this session. As you know, I've said multiple number of times that in any problem, we have to make sure we put human at the center of the problem, every problem. So we need to incorporate human-centric framework in our strategy. Second, we need to take advantage of the expertise of various experts and leverage the multidisciplinary approach to choose the best user-centric solution. And lastly, test the end product with the users, show some success, measure it, and pivot if needed, and scale. And this way, you're going to create an end product which is easily acceptable by the user. Thank you. I'm ready for the questions if you have any.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Amarjeet. There's a lot packed into that presentation, and I think that the use of the case study clearly indicates how useful it can be, especially when you're dealing with problems that are potentially ill-defined. I thought the COVID-19 case study was very relevant. Now, I'll just take a look. I'd like you to put questions in, okay? And then what happens is we can get, Amarjeet will basically answer them. So I'm just waiting for questions. Please put them in the question box. Okay, for that. Amarjeet, while we're waiting, has this been used in other problem spaces over at was it Public Services and Procurement Canada?
Yes, at PSPC, I had established, like I mentioned, from the ground up, the Human-Centered Design Office. And in there, I established not only the vision, but use this human-centric approach in multiple business lines. For example, in the real property, in the security, in one of the case study which you saw in the WellBeing, in the pension portal, in the pension as well. So another case study has been published in the Canada Digital School bus rides. It's all about how we are trying to improve the pension and looking at it from the human-centric approach. Feel free to check that out. You can see the personas and the whole journey. This has been, like I said, has been applied in multiple domains at PSPC.
I'd be interested in that. So is it PSPC that now is this part of the Canadian Public School of Public Service?
Yes.
Okay, and you said it called a bus ride?
Yes.
Do you draw any of your inspiration from some of the design thinking that's going on now at it's sort of been pioneered by Roger Martin and University of Toronto, Rotman School of Business, the opposable mind. I don't know if you've taken any, been able to be inspired by some of that work that's been going on. It's called business design.
Yes. So some of the, when I was hiring for the human-centered design, I had some of the students which I hired who had the design experience from that school. And those researchers have played a very important role in the way they research this information and how to analyze the data. There are a couple of key things in this presentation. Like I mentioned, it's how you first is how you ask the questions. There are different techniques which we need to follow to really ask the well-formed questions to get deeper insights from the users. The second is it's important that once you collect the data, what you do with that data. So analyzing the data from various angles, putting them in different themes, different categories, helps us to really understand the root causes of going more deeper and understanding the root causes of the problem, which sets the stone for the road mapping. Because if you're just jumping to the solution, we miss certain steps and certain root causes, and that deviates us in achieving the right roadmap for our solution. Because these problems are complex, it's important to spend some time in understanding the causes and how we should solve those causes.
I think that's a very apt description. Too many times they jump into the solution space without fully understanding what problem they're trying to solve and the deep meaning. Okay, that's great. Well, we got some questions now. What we're going to do is, I'll just put them to you. What were some of the key steps in your communications plan? Did you engage employees and advertise the playbook?
For the playbook, what we have done is, yes, because this was a time when everyone was going through this big problem, we needed to fix it urgently. So once the playbook was defined, we launched it to our own branch. If you see, it's called Digital Services Branch. So that was just our branch. We launched it to our branch it was 200 some employees to understand how they're seeing this playbook. The feedback was amazingly interesting. They were so happy because they gave us the interview when they see themselves in the playbook. They were very happy because they asked what could the team building activities they could do, how they could engage the employees. There was information for everyone in there. It was very well received. And after that, with the word of mouth, it went to the human resources branch to be taken it at the departmental level. And after that, there is still a movement going on. We created the well-being committee, where they not only looked at the playbook, but some of the questions which we asked has been taken up as part of a survey by the ombudsman to regularly check on the employees that how we are doing. Is there an improvement in the well-being of the employees? So it has taken different shapes and forms after the release.
Okay. Okay, good. So in the communications plan, you had identified all your stakeholders and you went to them in an appropriate manner to basically address them. No, that's super. Okay. Now the next one is, with COVID and given the uncertainty and how long it will be with us, has there been retooling to deal with an uncertain time frame?
That's a very interesting question, because even though you look at the uncertainty, there is what we can do with the uncertainty. It's like a change graph. You have to, when it happened, there was we call it a graph where people are resisting to some things, and then they start to understand and realize, and they go back to the normal, and they say, okay, maybe this is the new normal. So that's the normal human emotions which goes through. And it's everybody reacts to this situation differently. And that's the beauty of this human-centric design approach, that it looks at all the different angles. It allows you to propose different options. So one solution does not fit for all. So it's like one size does not fit for all kind of approach. You have to think different mechanisms, different checkpoints at certain interval, or apply different mechanisms to ensure that you are building momentum to help the employees come back and be more productive and provide more feeling happy in their well-being.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that was it's good. Just a second. We have okay, what are the steps you have taken or would suggest to use to gather all the viewpoints, personas, considering environments in large and complex organizations?
So in the one of the steps which you do when you're building the persona is to have the diverse views. How the diverse views are coming is by looking into going broader with how you search your employees or the stakeholders or the users in there, depending on the complex problem. You have to go to different kind of users. So users in this case, maybe the end user, or the person who is maybe entering the data in the system, or the front end who is maybe the call center. So depending on the problem, you have to go through the global approach to all kind of users to search out, hear their story, their challenges, their aspirations. That would give you the greater, bigger insight into this. So for example, in this well-being, we had interviewed the fresh students, the students who were onboarded during the COVID time, how they were feeling, the older generations, like, so we had male, female, and so we had wide variety of people who we interviewed to get the different perspectives. Sometimes, depending on the problem, you have to go to the outer side with academia and research as well to understand the complexity, and then gather the data and see what kind of similar themes are coming along, categorize them in a different ways. It's like looking at it from one angle, then another angle, and seeing what kind of story information is coming along. And that's how we are building the persona.
Okay, well, I think, and whether you're in a larger complex organization, it really doesn't matter. You're trying to simplify a complex system, but there's no limit on the number of personas you basically engage in, do you?
No, so the limit is not there. What is really important when we are developing personas is the differentiation between one versus the another. If both the personas are presenting the same information, then it means you haven't done the good analysis of the data. The personas has to be distinct. So the first persona, it could be three and five, up to 3 and 5 are the standard. But if you go more than 5, then you really have to narrow down in understanding what is the distinction between each of the persona. If you see the similar themes, bring it back to the persona. The definition of persona is that it is a fictional character, but it represents few items. Like in the well-being, you see we categorize the pain points, needs, opportunities. Some of the sites, the bar graph, which was representing the context, like the personality trait. Now, you don't want to, again, distinguish the persona between introvert as a separate and extrovert as separate, because what that little context is giving to your overall persona is important. So that's why if you see on the bar, it's showing whether it's introvert, extrovert. Alana is Alana. She's a team player. So again, on the bar, when we are showing the information related to the mental health, whether they are feeling good or bad on that day, is just one perspective. But what value it gives to the overall persona is important. So that's how you should frame and analyze further. It's more analysis you do, it gets more precise persona, and then you can actually nail down the problem, what you're trying to solve. So in a bigger transformation complex projects, for example, in the pension one, if you look at in the birth rights, it has multiple personas, but again, within 3 personas, it's rich enough that you can come back and say, we are just solving the problem for that persona in the phase 1, in phase 2, maybe for 2nd and 3rd, maybe for 3rd and 4th and 5th. So it really allows the business owners to think back their strategy of implementing the solution.
Okay, I'll just take a look. Well, I think questions, we've had some incisive questions. Well, Amarjeet, I will certainly be in contact with you because I'm curious, and potentially maybe possibly you can come and speak to my students if you feel so disposed. But anyways, thank you ever so much for coming to the conference and taking your time to prepare to make the presentation and all the preparation that went into it. So without further ado, thank you very much. I'll close this session. The next session is going to be Vic Pant. He's a chief scientist and chief scientific advisor to NRCan. He's going to be talking about science and policy integration, the NRCan digital accelerator, and technology readiness assessment. Okay, thank you very much, Amarjeet. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. I'm just going to have to be Sphinx-like for 15 seconds while we get the lag time for the meeting sorted out.